We do need to talk about race issues a bit in this United States, but before we do that, I remind you, according to this, where the currency level is $635 trillion today, that means that's how many dollars. Divided by 100 million people, that's $6.35 million per each and every one of 100 million people. And that's a rise from 2000, which was $93 trillion, which was developed over since, 1970 or some such thing, when it was $1 trillion. So anyway, that's $545 trillion or something in the last 24 years, or about $23 trillion per each and every year, if we don't divide it otherwise. It's about $23 trillion that our government and our nation increased the inflation rate. That is inflation, $23 trillion. Each and every year for the last 24 years, divided equally. And of course the media said, well, it's just nothing. It's just 1% or something, but it was all a lie. It's a lie. Inflation is the amount of currency they created that was not there before. That's all inflation is. It's not more, it's not less, it's not what you buy, it's how many dollars there are to spend. So back to race. We learn, or at least history says, that it was the, let's talk about black and white, and it really refers to everybody because there is no such thing really as race. More, it's correctly produced as the competition. And the way you get rid of competition is to ridicule it and gossip about it and create some version of judgment so that you can say, these people don't belong here, these people don't get to do what we do, and so on and so forth. And that's of course how the groups divide themselves, because they want more money for themselves. So all race is basically about money. There is no other real reason for it. It's all about money, and it's about the competition to get things, the resources that we want. And it's also about winning, because the real purpose of every game that people play is to win or to lose. I made you lose. So the real purpose here is I want to shout winner, and I want to be rich and all those things. Nonetheless, we have people, media in particular, that have been pushing and pushing and pushing to make civil war out of the past, over 100 years ago, or whatever you want to call it at. Let's just leave it in black and white. It goes to Chinese or Latin or whoever it is, just like the Europeans did the same thing with Indians. It's always the same. How do we get these other people to move? How do we get them to leave? How do we get more of our own stuff so that we can have more of what we want? And the end result, of course, is genocide if you can't make a move, which is what happened to the Indians. Slavery, however, was about the bankers. In order to get more money and have more things, they needed to do more work. And the way to do more work back before machines did the work was to have slaves. Slaves have been throughout all of history, everywhere on earth. And there's no reason not to believe that, because people have always wanted someone else to do their work. That's just a constant. That's, and it doesn't matter if you're black or white, it's the same thing for every group. Every group. And as far as the black goes, or the slavery goes, it said that it is the black people who gathered up their own black people and sold them to the market, traded them for guns or whatever it was, so they could do more damage again, because they wanted that. So it isn't the white people that gathered you up, it's the black people that gathered you up and sold you into slavery. And it's the banker who made it possible, because without the loans and things, it wasn't possible So the banker became your slave owner. And the Civil War was about the fact that the North said you have to release the slaves, but they didn't release the debt. And so the end result was Civil War because I have debt I can't pay. They're going to take the whole farm. They're going to take the whole community. They're going to take my whole life because I can't do the farming by myself. The tractor is gone, so to speak, or the combine is gone now. But the debt is still here. And of course, as always, it's the banker that won't release the debt. And it's Abraham Lincoln that made it possible to have a civil war because he didn't stand up to the banks. And of course, if he had stood up to the banks, they would have just removed him because, puppeteers are puppeteers. So don't blame the past. And as far as looking back in the past, it wasn't all white men. It wasn't. Because the end result of it is that even though some were bad, obviously so, horrifying in fact, and were terrible criminals, but there have always been terrible criminals, black, white, Chinese, it doesn't matter, there have always been terrible criminals, always doing heinous acts, always warring with everybody. That's just what hate is. And hate doesn't have a skin color or anything else. It's just hate. And of course, animals are herds. If you want to be a human animal, you're going to be a herd. That means you group together and you do everything the same as all the rest of them do because that's what the herd does. That's what the herd does. It believes what it believes because it believes this is what I have to do to be the part of the herd. So anyway, it is the white people who did in fact, buy people who they used for slaves, and to create more wealth. They wanted to be rich. How many black people do not want to be rich? They did it to be rich. So the end result of that is that it was also white people who made Civil War possible. They made the machines, they made the guns, they made everything, and they fought the war. There aren't a lot of black people in the Civil War, as far as I know. There were some, and they, fighting for themselves, and had every right to do so. Slavery is terrible, and it should not exist, but of course it always has. But the end result of it is competition, and the end result of it is, in today's world, that the propaganda teams are using whatever they can find. They're instructed by their god of university to spread the word that you get to be mad, you don't get to be mad. Whatever happened to people 100 years ago didn't happen to you, it happened to them. It happened to them, not you. So if you want to be in part, participate in this world, you have to do the best you can with what you have, just like everybody else. So a lot of white people that aren't poor or that aren't rich, and they want to be just like you want to be, just like the Chinese want to be, just like everybody else wants to be. And the end result of it is, of course, that those who came first and those who had property and kept the property and sacrificed their lives to keep the property and did what they had to do to be landlords or whatever it is, ended up owning more than the other people who spent all their money on this and that and the other thing. Most landlords, spent their life to get that, and didn't get that on their own. They inherited some, and so on and so on. So it really matters what you do. It matters who you do it with. It matters if you made a mistake, because one mistake is enough to sink what you can do or what you cannot do for the rest of your life. Buy the wrong house and find out that that was the wrong house, and that's a big problem. Or of course, if you didn't buy a house and just paid rent for the rest of your life, that was a big problem. Reverse mortgage is a big problem. They're stealing your inheritance. They're stealing the inheritance of your children. They're stealing your life. Because in the end, at least, if you collect one payment from them, if you sign up and you get paid once, and you die, then your relatives or whoever it is that might be inheriting that property that you own is now forced to find the entire payment for the entire house within 30 days of your death. No, you can't grieve for someone who died. You have 30 days to get your payments together. To get the loan together, you have 30 days or you're going to lose the property. That's all there is. There's no arguing it. That's what you signed. That's the facts. And of course, if you own the house and your wife's name isn't on it or whatever it is, or your children's name isn't on the house or whatever, they didn't do that, didn't sign with you, they get evicted. Everything about reverse mortgage is basically bad if you have an inheritor. And then even otherwise, you're still responsible for all the property tax. You're still responsible for all the maintenance. And if you don't do that, they can throw you out. So, there's just an endless parade of criminals, an endless parade of failure, an endless parade of lies that are trying to tear this nation apart, and doing a very good job of it, as is seen in many ways. And of course, the people who are creating mass murder and things like that, they're bad in so many ways, but nonetheless, the reality of it is, we're surrounded by criminals that are in charge of everything. And there aren't a lot of choices beyond that, because the end result is your choice becomes whoever the people who make the people who put him up for election decide to put up for election. You might think you have a choice, but you don't. You might think you have some kind of knowledge about somebody that is going to be voted upon, but you don't. They can vote however they want to, whenever they feel like it. You can't vote for someone to vote for you. And democracy is, we vote on the law that becomes our way of life. That's what democracy is. We vote on the law ourselves that becomes our way of life. And if we don't vote on the law itself, then we're dependent upon those who do vote on the law for us. In other words, you can't be so damn lazy that you won't vote, you won't decide on the law that we need to have as a nation. You don't get to decide what is or is not true about what your politicians can and will do. You don't get to decide that. They get to decide that. You have to decide on whether or not you want to be a democracy. And that means that you have to define the law that is the best we can do. Now, in the 1700s or 1800s, or whatever you want to call it, the best they could do was to send somebody else to vote for them. That was the best they could do. And that's how the Electoral College gets started. We can't all know, we can't all vote, we can't all do this, that, and the other thing. Back in the 1800s, it just was this fact of life. So they had to send somebody else to vote for them. That is no longer true. We can vote for ourselves. We need to vote for ourselves. We must vote for the law that is for ourselves. And we must guarantee to the world that we will honor the law that we create to govern our leaders. They must choose the same thing. It's not a case of letting leaders create armies that are going to confront us and going to kill us and what have you. We have to stop them. And we only can do that with the law. The law is our weapon. The law is our future. The law is our truth. We have to make the law for ourselves. And of course, one of those laws is that you just can't go attacking somebody else. And the second part of that law is your leader has to come to court and qualify what it is that they have done, what they've allowed to be done, what they're supporting. And if they don't, then it is the leader that gets to be attacked. We're not attacking nations, we're attacking leaders, if that comes to that. Leaders are the problem, and leaders are the solution, because we can take them to law just like they take us to law. With rules, anybody can become a victim of the rule. That's what a rule is for, to make you a victim. So